Welcome once again to another episode of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. It is March, and I'm excited about this show. We're going to start doing this once a week, sometimes twice a week. I might even bring some guests on, but there's a lot to get into, especially with it being March. We've got March Madness just around the corner, Selection Sunday in about 2 weeks, and I'm going to talk a little bracketology. I'm going to break down the brackets for high school basketball for Alabama and Georgia. We got the Final Four going on in the AHSAA. We've got the Elite Eight in the GHSA, and I'm going to preview those games. And I'm also going to talk NFL Combine. We just had the NFL Combine. Who are some big winners from that? We got NFL free agency that's about to kick off. And then, of course, we've got the Atlanta Hawks. Going to talk spring training, World Baseball Classic. This is my favorite month. I know a lot of people say that October is their favorite month for sports, but by far March is my favorite month, especially when you add the World Baseball Classic into the mix. Because of March Madness, absolutely love the tournament. And we get into the brackets and talk about these local teams, especially in Georgia. We remember when Mercer beats Duke in 2014. We remember when Georgia State ended up beating Baylor in 2015. They're memories that will forever hold with us. Kennesaw State making it to the NCAA tournament a couple years back. I'm talking just specifically the teams in Georgia to make the NCAA tournament. I think it's fascinating because there's a lot of talent when it comes to high school basketball in Georgia and in Alabama for that matter. I'm actually going to start with Alabama. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the matchups. We're going to start with 1A. I mean, we've got Final Four games in Birmingham happening right now as we speak. Actually, by the time this show airs, these games are probably going to be in the books. Hubertville, R.C. Hatch in the single A boys bracket, and then Wadley taking on Brantley. That's what's going on today. And then we also have Red Bay taking on Lafayette in 2A classification. How about those Lafayette Bulldogs? They're going to be taking on Red Bay at 5:30 tonight. We got Providence Christian. They are taking on Section. And then in the 3A classification, Lauderdale County taking on Montgomery Academy. These games are going to happen tomorrow, 11:30 in the morning at Birmingham. I think that's Central Time. That might be 12:30. Southside Selma taking on Whitesburg Christian Academy. That's the 3A classification. How about 4A classification taking place tomorrow night? Fairfield Preparatory taking on Deschler. Jackson taking on Asheville. How about the 5A classification? Calera taking on Coleman. And I think that is about it. Saraland in the 6A classification taking on Oxford. And then Sylacauga taking on Guntersville. That's back to the 5A classification. LeFlore Magnet School taking on Winona. And then Dothan taking on Tuscaloosa County on Thursday. Fairhope taking on Hoover. Hoover has won 4 in a row. It's some crazy thing that they have been able to do. But you look at the matchup. And Calera taking on Coleman. That's in the 6A classification. As Saraland, man, you thought they were a football school. They're also a basketball school. They're in the Final Four. Remember, they beat Russell County in the Elite Eight and to get to this point. They beat Russell County in the Sweet 16, rather, to get to this point where they are playing in the Final Four. All right, so we took a look at the boys. Now let's take a look at the girls classification. And, we do have some local teams that are playing in the classification. Let's start with single A. We've got Francis Marion taking on Marion County. That's going to be at 10 o'clock this morning. Kingston taking on Wintersboro. In the 2A classification, later today, 4 o'clock, Lynette taking on Cold Springs. And then we have Clark County taking on North Sand Mountain. In the 3A classification, which will be tomorrow, St. James taking on Mars Hill Bible, and then Mobile Christian taking on Glencoe. We got Montgomery Catholic taking on Good Hope, and then we got Meek taking on Oakman. 4A classification, Jackson taking on Plainview, Chelsea taking on Hazel Green, and then Park Crossing taking on Fort Payne. This is 6A classification. Park Crossing, the defending 6A state champions. Briarwood Christian is taking on Guntersville. Remember, all these games are in Birmingham. Charles Henderson taking on Moody. Auburn taking on Bob Jones. That's going to be on Thursday at 11 o'clock. And then Alma Bryant taking on Hoover. That is in the other bracket. All right, let's go ahead and pull up that graphic because I do want to talk high school basketball brackets for the quarterfinals in the state of Georgia. And say what you want. I mean, we did have some local teams that is advanced to the Elite Eight, and we had some local teams that got upset in the Sweet 16, like the Carver Tigers, a huge upset as Farrell ended up beating them. But let's go ahead and look at, we're going to start with the girls bracket for the GHSA high school basketball playoffs. By the way, we just wrapped up GIAA. Congratulations to all the teams. Pacelli wins 3 in a row. Terrell Academy, the girls ended up winning out of Dawson. Brentwood swept the championships. Athens Christian for the girls won. We had Brookwood win it for the boys for 3A classification. The single A classifications were Memorial Day, Citizens Christian. Brentwood swept the 2A. And then we had Terrell Academy, Athens Christian for the girls, and then Brookwood and Pacelli for the boys. All right. We are going to start with the girls bracket, and I'm going to start with 6A. Now, we don't have any 6A schools in the Columbus area, but we've got Archer, who is taking on Hillgrove. Hillgrove ended up going on the road and beat Carrollton 47-37. They will be against Archer, and Archer is playing at home after beating Camden County. Down in the bottom quadrant, Grayson taking on South Forsyth on the road. And remember, the Final Four is going to be March the 7th at Georgia State University. Let's go to the right side of the bracket. We got Lowndes going to be on the road taking on Campbell out of Smyrna, Georgia. And then we have Newton that's going to be on the road taking on South Paulding. Final Four will be March the 7th. The championship will be March the 14th at the Macon Coliseum. Let's take a look at 5A girls. Again, we don't have any schools from the Columbus area, but one thing that I love about the brackets, I followed basketball throughout the state of Georgia, throughout my sports broadcasting career, and if there's one thing that I recognize is a team that seems to be there just about every year. And so when I think of girls basketball in the 5A classification, I think of Rivers Ridge. I think of Woodard Academy. I really think of those teams that can win it all. Last year, River Ridge, they're the defending champions that coming into this. So let's go. Woodward Academy, they are hosting Coffee. Coffee was able to beat Morrow in the Sweet 16. Woodward Academy over to beat Evans. Brunswick lost to Milton, and Milton is going to host Sequoia, who ended up beating Noonan. And the defending champions, River Ridge, they are going to be on the road taking on Bradwell Institute. River Ridge was a 2 seed, taking on Bradwell Institute out of Hinesville, who was a 1 seed. River Ridge was able, as a 2 seed, to get through that bracket. Langston Hughes was a 1 seed that got upset by South Paulding. So River Ridge comes out of that bracket. So the defending 5A champions going to be on the road. Tough challenge, taking on a very talented Bradwell Institute team. And then down at the bottom right bracket, Loganville is hosting Creekview. As Creekview ended up beating New Manchester, Loganville ended up beating Shiloh. Let's go to 4A girls. Now, we do have 2 teams in the Chattahoochee Valley that are 4A schools, but they're not in the bracket anymore. Harris County and Northside, they both made the playoffs. But let's take a look at the 4A girls. Might be some familiar teams in here. Now, Northview, the team that beat Harris County in the first round, they are on the road taking on Cartersville. Man, I was hoping for that Warner Robins Harris County quarterfinals. Cartersville ends up getting the upset win over Warner Robins on the road. So Cartersville is hosting Northview. And then we've got Marist taking on Powerhouse North Oconee. Marist is going to be hosting. as Marist was able to defeat Woodland. North Oconee was able to defeat Midtown in the Sweet 16. Let's go to the left side of the bracket. Creekside, which is always a powerhouse in 4A, taking on Jones County out of Gray. Big shout out to my broadcasting colleagues from Middle Georgia Sports Live. I know they cover Jones County over there. And then we've got Dalton and Kell. And, of course, the Final Four is going to be at Atkins Arena in Athens, the home of the Athens Rock Lobsters. That's going to be exciting. And then March the 12th is going to be the state championship at the Macon Coliseum. Let's go to 3A girls. 3A girls. Morrow ends up beating White County to advance. They will host Cherokee Bluff, who beat Ridgeland. Down at the bottom, we have got Stevenson. That's going to be on the road taking on Sandy Creek. And then on the right side, how about Jenkins out of Savannah hosting Pickens? Pickens was able to get the win over North Hall. Jenkins ended up beating Lumpkin County, a big win for Jenkins, those Lumpkin County from Dahlonega. And then Oconee County gets the big win over Baldwin. Remember, Baldwin was a state powerhouse, and they won the state championship a couple of years ago. I remember that. It was and then of course, you look at Baldwin. They lost in the championship to Cherokee Bluff last year. So Baldwin trying to get back to winning a state championship, but they fell short, losing to Oconee County. And then Heritage from Catoosa ended up beating Northwest Whitefield. So Heritage of Catoosa hosting Oconee County. And then the Final Four will be at the Legacy Arena in Douglas. All right, let's take a look at 2A. 2A girls. I was there Friday night as Hardaway was able to defeat Carver. Hardaway, a number 5 seed, will be hosting the Elite 8 matchup against the 20th seed Coahola Creek. Coahola Creek was able to defeat Franklin County, who defeated the 4 seed Morgan County. So Hardaway, Coahola Creek, the winner will advance to the Final Four, which will be at Legacy Arena in Douglasville on March the 6th. Who could they possibly play? Well, the team they beat in the Final Four last year, Josie, is the number 1 overall seed. They had no problem with Sonoraville. They will be taking on Hart County, who got the upset win over West Side of Macon. Well, not really an upset. Hart County was a 9 seed. West Side of Macon was an 8 seed. But it's still road win, tough win for Hart County. Tough task taking on Josie, who looks to possibly have that collision course with Hardaway in the Final Four. All right, let's go to the right side of the bracket. Columbia, who Hardaway beat in the Elite 8 last year. Columbia is the 3rd-ranked team in this bracket, and they are taking on Tatnall County out of Glenville, who got the big win over Appling County in a little bit of a rivalry game. Tatnall County has got a tall task, having to go to Decatur and take on Columbia. And now at the bottom right, we've got Murray County. They were the state runners-up last year to Hardaway. They are hosting Thompson. Thompson was able to get the win over Union County. Murray County ended up defeating Laney. And this is where I want to talk about possible matchups for Hardaway, because I do think they're going to advance past Coahola Creek. I know that Josie causes problems. Murray County, Columbia. I actually think Murray County is going to get to the championship. But that matchup against Josie, I give Hardaway a chance, especially when they got Rihanna Boynton back. They're a completely different team. I know this was a very tough, close game in the Final Four last year, and Josie is the number 1 team in 2A for the girls' classification, but you can never count out this Hardaway Hawks team. And they, in my opinion, were underseeded. They should have been one of the top 4 teams, but I think that they advanced to their 4th straight Final Four. All right, let's talk Class 1A Division I girls. By the way, I am honored to be a part of the broadcast team along with Thrift Behringer, Middle Georgia Sports Live. We will be live streaming the Final 4 games at Fort Valley State University on Friday and Saturday for Class 1A Division I and Class 1A Division II for both the girls and the boys. That is 8 games. And now I'm going to have to brush up on my schools as far as Class 1A Division I and Division II. They're the smaller schools, But those are the type of towns where the whole town just shuts down and goes to the game. All right, let's talk about Heard County out of Franklin, just outside of our coverage area of the Chattahoochee Valley. They will take on Putnam County, as Heard County was able to defeat Bremen, Putnam County able to defeat Fanning County, and then you got Elbert County going to Vidalia in that game. It's going to be in Vidalia. Over on the right side of the bracket, East Lawrence. They are hosting Bacon County, and then we've got Thomasville hosting Rabun County. They know a thing or two about winning in Thomasville with Thomas County Central, now Brookwood Boys. I mean, they definitely have a winning culture down there in Thomasville. All right, Class A, Division II. This is where Taylor County, Chatco, Marion County, these are where these schools are out of. We got Wilcox County. They're going to be hosting Brooks County. And then Bowden is hosting Macon County over on the right side of the bracket. Metter is hosting Terrell County. How about Terrell County out of Dawson, Georgia? Terrell Academy just won a GIAA championship. Now Terrell County has a chance to get to the Final Four. And how awesome would that be if they could get to Fort Valley State? We got ECI. They're on the road taking on Washington Wilkes. We do have the private girls I want to talk about because we got Hebron Christian taking on Whitefield Academy. We've got Christian Heritage taking on St. Francis. We got Holy Innocents Episcopal taking on Galloway. We got Greater Atlanta Christian School taking on Athens Academy. Now let's talk about the boys. We're going to start with 6A. And when it comes to high school boys, 6A, there's only one school I could think of that is a powerhouse, and that is Joseph Wheeler. There's some others, Grayson, Buford, but if you want to talk about 6A basketball, Wheeler is the defending champions. And I think that Joseph Wheeler still looks fantastic. They've had great players like Isaiah Collier, Jalen Brown, Sharif Abdul-Rahim. I'm really high on Joseph Wheeler out of Marietta. But let's go ahead and take a look at the bracket. Grayson, they end up getting the win over Central Gwinnett. They're going to be taking on Hillgrove. How about that? Hillgrove, both boys and girls in the Elite Eight. Meadow Creek, they got the win over Valdosta. They're going to be taking on Pebble Brook. How about Joseph Wheeler? They are going to be taking on North Gwinnett. And then McEachern, they are going to be taking on Peachtree Ridge. I still think Joseph Wheeler is the favorite. You never count out Grayson. I think it's a collision course between Joseph Wheeler and Grayson in the championship, which will be held March the 14th at the Macon Coliseum. By the way, the Final Four will be at Georgia State University. Let's move on to 5A boys. In the 5A boys classification, I mean, there's some really talented teams, and this is why I file Kyle Sandy from Sandy Spell. But when you think about the 5A classification, you think of teams like Woodard Academy. Remember, they had Walker Kessler a couple of years ago. But the defending champions is Tri-Cities. Tri-Cities was able to beat Woodward Academy in the championship last year. Obviously, Lee County went to the Final Four last year. I just visited Leesburg over the weekend. Man, they love their sports in Leesburg with Lee County. And then, of course, Langston Hughes, just outside of the Atlanta area in Fairburn. They also went to the Final Four, which, by the way, Northside is going to be in the same region with Langston Hughes and Woodward Academy next year. Can't wait for that. That's going to be fun and exciting. All right, let's talk about Woodward Academy. They are going to be hosting Howson County. Big shout out to Howson County. I know Middle Georgia Sports Live is all over that coverage. Braden Holder, Brett Taylor. They love the Howson County Bears. We call them the Hoco Bears. But they got a very tall order having to face Woodward Academy on the road. Let's talk Gainesville. I know their football team went through a lot of turmoil with the whole suspending players, but now Dutchtown is coming to Gainesville. Gainesville has an opportunity to get to the Final Four. Alexander, they are hosting Decatur, and then we got Langston Hughes hosting the defending champion Tri-Cities. Tri-Cities has to go on the road to try to get a win over Langston Hughes. And then, of course, March 13th, the championship's going to be at the Macon Coliseum. 4A boys, let's go. Pace Academy, they are hosting Southwest DeKalb. We got East Forsyth. They are on the road taking on Cambridge, North Oconee. taking on St. Poi X, and then Ware County taking on Jonesboro. Jonesboro is actually in the same region with Northside and Harris County. Jonesboro had such a fantastic season. I'll tell you what, when you look at the 4A classification for the boys, a lot of great teams, a lot of great talented teams that come out of there. But there's one team that really comes to mind when I think of the defending champions of the 4A classification. I think of the one team, North Oconee. I mean, North Oconee just wins at just about everything. They've won baseball championships, they've won football championships, and they win a basketball championship. And I think North Oconee, if you look at North Oconee's path, obviously North Oconee taking on St. Poi X on the road, that is a very tough game. But North Oconee can try to, I think they win that to take on Jonesboro in the Final Four, which will be held at Atkins Arena in Athens, home of the Athens Rock Lobsters. 3A boys, the number one team and the three-time state champion goes down. Sandy Creek loses to Harlem 42-41. In my opinion, one of the biggest upsets in high school basketball. And I cannot believe that Sandy Creek is no longer in this tournament. Harlem takes them down, so guess what that means. With Troup County getting the win against Long County on the road, the number 9 seed Troup County is going to be hosting an Elite 8 game on Wednesday against Harlem. Yes, you heard that right. Troup County, who has got excellence when it comes to football and baseball and basketball, I know I'm getting excited. Basketball, they have just shocked everybody. And the Troup County Tigers is hosting an Elite 8 game. Let's take a look at the bottom bracket. Doherty. Remember, some of the schools in Columbus will be facing Doherty in next year's classification. That school out of Albany. They are taking on Douglas of Atlanta on the road. We've got Calhoun taking on East Hall, and we got Baldwin on the road taking on Cross Creek. Now let's take a look at the 2A boys. The number 1 overall seed Carver Tigers go down to Therrell. Therrell was an 18 seed, or 16 seed rather. I don't know how that they were able to get this win, but I just don't understand why Therrell is in the same bracket with Carver. They're considered a top 10 team according to Kyle Sandy. But Carver goes down. Therrell will host Hart County. Hart County ended up beating Spencer, and they ended up beating Carver of Atlanta. So it's Therrell Hart County in the Elite 8 on March the 4th. We've got Morgan County, the 5 seed, ended up defeating Tattnall County, and they are going to be taking on Thompson, who ended up going on the road and beating Crisp County. So just unusual circumstances here, but Morgan County, I think, is the favorite out of this side of the bracket. And then you got South Atlanta taking on Kip Academy. Kip Academy ended up beating Franklin County. Columbia, who's considered one of the top teams in 2A, taking on the defending champion Butler. That is going to be a massive game in the Elite 8. It will be at Butler. And then, of course, the Final Four will be Legacy Arena in Douglasville, and then the Macon Coliseum on March the 14th. All right, Division I boys, Class Single A. I'm excited that I'm going to be on the call for these games on the NFHS network. Vidalia is hosting Commerce. Model on the road in Macon to take on Southwest. There's a chance Southwest can win. That's one of the teams that Middle Georgia Sports Live covers. I'm excited for them that they'll get to have Southwest in this, hopefully. Fitzgerald, the Purple Hurricane, hosting Putnam County. And then we've got Rabun County hosting Fanning County. Got to brush up on my Class 1A Division I schools, because I know a little bit about their football programs, but let's talk a little bit about their basketball programs. Man, because I could be on the call for a Rabun County Fitzgerald Final Four and just talk football because, Gunner Stockton went to Rabun County. Okay, don't have to do that. I'll brush up on my basketball. Class 1A Division II. This is where Chaco is. Chaco got a big win over Metter. Huge win to go to the Elite 8 where they will be on the road taking on Bowden. And this is why I do not like the GHSA coin flip. Can't stand it. Chaco 27-1, they were the best team all year, having to go on the road to take on Bowden. Are you kidding me? Look, Chaco has had a fantastic year, don't get me wrong. But anytime you go on the road in a hostile environment, and especially a great program like Bowden that knows how to win, especially in football, it is going to be very challenging. I don't think that it's not possible that this should happen, but it did. And I think Chaco is more than capable of going on the road and getting a win. And I would love to be on the call for Chaco if they get to the Final Four at Fort Valley State. And the winner of that Chaco Bowden game on Wednesday will take on the winner of Wheeler County and Clinch County. I'll be honest with you, I don't know much about these schools, but I will do my homework so I can be ready for that broadcast. Let's go to the other side of the bracket as Portal hosting Mitchell County. And then you've got Turner County over there in Ashburn. I know about Turner County. They're right off 75. Turner County going to be taking on Washington Wilkes. And those Final Four games will be at 3 and 7 respectively on Friday. And then one more thing, going to talk private schools. Remember, they take all the private schools out and they have their own little separate bracket. We got Darlington taking on Calvary Day. We've got Green Forest taking on Mount Vernon. Holy Innocents Episcopal taking on Christian Heritage. And North Cobb Christian taking on the Walker School. Remember, the Walker School beat Carver in the Lemon Street Classic. That's a very good team. Wow. I know that was a mouthful, but that was the bracketology for high school basketball. I know Kyle Sandy would be proud. I would love to get him on the show, but first things first, just definitely want to sit down, have a cup of coffee with him, pick his brain, because he is the guru of high school basketball in the state of Georgia. Why don't we do this? Why don't we go ahead and take a break? When we come back, I'm going to have NFL Combine, bracketology, Major League Baseball spring training, all of it. You don't want to go anywhere. It's a Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. It's time to talk NFL Combine. It was a great day for several players, to include running back Mike Washington from Arkansas. He had a 4.3340. I think that he could go up in the draft. He ran for over 1,000 yards, had 8 touchdowns last year. His teammate, Taylon Green, had a pretty good combine. I think that he could end up being a gadget quarterback that could possibly make an NFL roster as like a wildcat type of quarterback. Chris Brazzell, the second from Tennessee, had a pretty decent combine, and he ran a 4.3740. How about Zachariah Branch? I think Zachariah Branch could be a slot wide receiver for Georgia. Coming out in the draft, he could be maybe a second or third rounder. I mean, come on, Falcons, you're there in the second round. Go get Zachariah Branch if it doesn't work out between Darnell Mooney and Drake London, because obviously they actually need weapons, definitely, because they have no idea who their starting quarterback is going to be week one. Caden Proctor, remember he was the top-ranked offensive lineman to come out preseason last year. I kind of felt like Monroe Freeling from Georgia, Spencer Fano. Spencer Fano did not get the workout that he really wanted. Still going to be one of the top offensive linemen to come out of the draft. But when you talk about some of the top players, D'Angelo Pounds, from Indiana, he was a part of that championship team that won the national championship. Indiana doesn't have a whole lot of players that are going to be drafted in the NFL, and not like Ohio State. Ohio State with Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese, Carnell Tate, they could end up having several, maybe 5 players drafted in the first 15 picks. That is going to be incredible. Don't forget, I'll talk NFL free agency. It is March. Going to talk NFL free agency. Already some big-time free agents being released. The Chiefs just released Jawan Taylor. it's going to be interesting because we're going to have pro days. Georgia's pro day is going to be coming up in a few weeks, and then we'll have the NFL draft. There's not a whole lot I take away from the NFL Combine. I just know that it's an event. People like to watch it, and it really has no bearing on whether these players get drafted in the first round or the second round, in my opinion. And I know that there might be a player that nobody remembered because they didn't really pay attention to that player, but they just stand out at the Combine. And sometimes people have a bad Combine, and that doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to get drafted at a high spot. All right, let's take a look at bracketology. We are going to switch gears. How about the Georgia Bulldogs? They got their 20th win. They defeated South Carolina. They are going to be in this tournament. They have not made back-to-back NCAA tournaments since 2001, 2002, when Jim Herrick was the coach. They have not made it out of the first round since 2002, when they were a number 3 seed. And then, of course, they had that whole academic scandal, and they had to vacate their wins that year and the following year. But Georgia basketball still trying to get back on track. I never agreed with them firing Mark Fox, but Mike White is a decent enough coach, and they have the tools and the resources to get back into the NCAA tournament. Now, they do play Alabama at Stegman Coliseum this Tuesday, and then they're on the road against Mississippi State before the SEC tournament starts next week. We'll have Selection Sunday. Not next Sunday, but we're going to have that on March the 15th. So that is coming up. I can't wait for that. And then, of course, it's March. I love the NCAA tournament, but there are some things that we've got to talk about when it comes to bracketology. Now, the projected field for the 68 teams, according to Joe Lunardi at ESPN, is out. And so we've got the number 1 seeds, Duke, Michigan, Arizona, and UConn. Okay, that's not bad. The number 2 seeds, Florida, their stock is just rising. Had a slow start to start the season. The defending champions are projected to be a 2 seed, along with Illinois. And we also have, and I'm looking to see Purdue and Iowa State. Yeah, that's not a bad number 2 seeds. All right, the number 3 seeds. The number 3 seeds are Houston, Gonzaga, who I was watching them the other night, taking on St. Mary's. And then you also have Kansas, I think that name alone, that's why they're considered a number 3 seed. Nebraska being a 3 seed, they have really been the surprise this year, not necessarily a basketball school. So every week I add a seed. So let's add the 4 seeds. Texas Tech, Michigan State, Alabama, and Virginia. At Alabama, who went to the Elite 8 last year, the Final Four the year before. If they get a 4 seed, I mean, right now that's the highest seed after Florida in the SEC. So I project that the SEC is going to get 10 teams, 11 if you count Auburn. Now, Auburn lost to Ole Miss at home. Now, I know they played a tough schedule, but they're not getting into this thing unless they rally off a couple more wins and they get to that 18, 19 wins. If they could get to that, they will be in the NCAA tournament. You're not getting into this tournament with 15 wins. I'm sorry. I know there are Auburn fans out there that want to just go ahead and pile on the hate mail towards me, but it's just not happening. All right, here are the last 4 byes. Joe Lunardi is projected that Georgia is going to get one of those last 4 byes. The problem with that is they're probably going to be a 10 seed, and the last 2 times they were in the NCAA tournament, they were a 10 seed. They got ousted by Michigan State, and they got ousted by Washington. So Georgia, Missouri, Texas A&M, and Texas, all SEC teams. Wow. The last 4 in, these are teams that are considered the 11 seeds. They'll be playing on that Tuesday before the tournament really starts. Auburn, TCU, Santa Clara, and Indiana. Yes, Joe Lunardi has got Auburn projected to make the NCAA tournament despite them only having 15 wins. Don't agree with that, but we'll see how Auburn finishes out this season. First 4 out. These teams are not going to make the tournament according to Joe Lunardi. Cal, New Mexico, Ohio State, and USC. And then the next 4 out, VCU, Virginia Tech, Seton Hall, and Cincinnati. There's a nice partying gift for these last 8 schools. A berth in the NIT. That's not bad. Winning the NIT, you get to put up an NIT banner. I mean, it's all good. All right. What a great show. I know the Hawks got a win over the Portland Trailblazers. They're looking good, still in ninth place, about a game and a half outside of trying to get to eighth place. But I think that they look fantastic with Jonathan Kuminga. I love Jonathan Kuminga. It's a great pickup for the Atlanta Hawks. Just wait until Buddy Hield starts feeling the rhythm, and then you got Onyeka Okongwu starting to live up to that hype of being a sixth overall pick a couple years ago. And then, of course, they're going to build this team around Jalen Johnson. No question about it. I think the Atlanta Hawks can make some noise in the Eastern Conference playoffs. And then finally, we got World Baseball Classic coming up. I will go over the schedule. I might do another show later this week. I don't know. But thank you for watching the show. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Facebook and YouTube channel. I'm also found on the socials. I'm on Instagram. I'm on the X. I'm on Facebook. And you can also listen to the podcast commercial free on Apple and Spotify. Thank you for tuning in to another exciting show, and have a great rest of your day, everybody. We'll see you next time.